Thomas Green here with the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. On the episode today, we have Marcus Higgs. Marcus, welcome.
Hey, good to be here, Thomas.
It is very
Thank
good
you.
to
Thank
have
you.
you. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, my name is Marcus Aurelius Higgs. That is my real name. I work with Certain Future, working with parents of preteens, 10 to 14 years old, as a communication coach. So it is a life coach, but I'm in alignment with you in connecting with your kid during this particular phase when they're starting to pull away and turn away. I work with parents to give them the confidence to understand what's happening, and then actually the strategies and tactics to start connecting with their kid when they start to naturally turn away. Like it's a part of human development. So we can explore that in this podcast, and that's what I do.
Thank you for the introduction. When we were messaging beforehand, I sort of had to, I don't know, take a pause in the sense that although I have three little ones, my biggest one, I think I'll probably blink and she will be a preteen in no time at all. So, and also I had to think about the fact that actually I am quite unprepared for this particular time in my life. Like I have to just own it and say, yes, I don't know a great deal about this topic. So if myself and other people are in that scenario, meaning they're a bit of a blank slate on this topic, what would you share with them?
First, I would share from your own experience. You felt you were unprepared when you saw that baby coming out of the womb. You were just like, oh my goodness, what I get myself into? And you'll be all right. It's emergent. Life is emergent. You can know skills on how to deal with it as it comes, but every stage of development is going to be new and unique. Um, the second thing I'll share, Gabor Mate wrote a wonderful book, Hold On to Your Child. You're growing them up as a dependent. I call it maternal energy, is holding them close, saying you're loved, you're safe, you're secure, you're seen, you're soothed. And then it's paternal energy that pushes them away. And it still says you're safe, you're secure, you're seen, you're soothed. And I need you to be independent and try this on your own and do this on your own. You can still come back to me for support, right? Um, so they are going, it's a natural, healthy thing to push them into independence. And that's where the tension arises. And as you start to study and understand this, you'll be more prepared. Um, what I deal with, sorry, does that satisfy your question first?
Yeah, I think I'm following, but yeah, I'm
Okay,
happy to listen more if you've got more.
sure. What I was going to say after that is also understanding that the final form of all of this is interdependence. That is, I promise to take care of me to be in service to you, if you promise to take care of you to be in service to me. And when you have that future cast in mind, um, it makes the journey a little bit better. Like cleaning up the nappies now and burping the kids and walking them. It's meaningful. It feels good, right? But then also when you could forward cast that and say, okay, there's a lot of life that we're going to go through here, and you just take the next step in front of you. And that's why we're having this conversation. Yeah, I hope this feeds into the next step.
Okay, so a general principle. I mean, my interpretation of the answer might be you're sort of, in some sense, getting them ready for the world. Is that a is that an okay answer based on what you said?
Yes, and um, particularly preteens, they're throwing spaghetti at the wall and they don't know what the world is, and they're dysregulated, right? You're getting them prepared for the world in the work that I do by being introspective. As in the woo-woo line, you are the universe experiencing itself. We're not woo-woo, but you're helping them see themselves and forming their identity, because with a stronger identity, they're able to meet the challenges of the world, right? And I love how you said you're getting them prepared for the world, because in my worldview, the world is going to break them. This comes from Ernest Hemingway, his line, the world breaks us all, and some are made stronger in the broken places. Life is just about stress management and how you respond to it. What you're doing at this age in the work that I do, you're helping them to respond with their own identity, so that as they level up to other parts where they're stressed, they know that they can do it. And the final point I'll make is the way you're doing that is by modeling it yourself. I work with parents of preteens so that they're a trustworthy present parent.
Well, one of the questions on your profile was in relation to peer pressure, and although I do think that it's a good topic. It's almost like the term peer pressure is like, oh yeah, everyone kind of knows about that. I can say from firsthand that um, I have an experience where you kind of attempt to instill good values in your kids, right? You try and teach them right from wrong and all this. And then if they get a little bit of time with, for example, the wrong friend, they can almost not unlearn, but it sort of supersedes what you've attempted to teach them, and they can learn something completely almost opposite from what you've attempted to teach them. Have you got any thoughts around that topic?
Yeah, yeah. Um, that's why I say I work. Okay. Yes. So first of all, they're going to be exploring other worldviews at this age. And what I mean by that is at 12 or 10 to 14 is what I work with, but let's understand developmental window shifts with different people, different contexts. What they're doing is they're looking to say, okay, what am I going to take on? But everything that you've told me up until now, parent, has been gospel, has been black and white. But then they're going to get other worldviews where it's just like they start to get skeptical. Skepticism seeps in at this age. Nuance doesn't come until 18, where they're just like, okay, I see how you can be trying to tell me your understanding of the truth, even though I'm forming my own. They're going to seek out other points of views, which will be ideally, if you're in a pod of parents or other trustworthy present adults that they have, um, teachers, coaches, and so on. The reason they seek out peers is because oftentimes that's where we can go without being judged, right? We we feel like adults have it all together. Adults are perfect. Those of us who are adults know that's I say that's not true, but rather we know we're growing, right? Kids don't understand developmental stages of, hey, you are gonna break, and the way you grow is by repairing what you break. Peer pressure, what you're speaking about. Working with the parent, so trust is built over time. And I'm working with you for you to keep yourself integrated so that your kid can come back to you as a trustworthy, safe space when they need to. I'm trying to give you a head start on the social media really right now, or all the other stories that are going to come to them. So you can mitigate a lot of the headache. You're not going to mitigate all of it. Reason being is because it is a breaking weight. It is them forming their own ideas. I mean, let me ask you from your own lived experience. There are ideas that you have that your parents didn't agree with. And that is the rub. That is the bit that makes you you and that makes us us. But eventually you do see that yeah, I'm gonna come back to serve you, mom or dad, or I'm gonna come back to serve you, community. So I think I said all that to say there's groundwork you can do to help buffer that. Some of it is gonna happen. And then I guess that's a serenity prayer. Let me knowing what I can influence and then taking that power. And then I just bought the prayer, but having the wisdom to know what I can do and what I can't do.
Okay. In one of your previous answers, you mentioned perhaps being an example in your relationship, so that your child can see what a good relationship looks like, or perhaps I think in your profile the question is around how dealing with conflict, how you can be an example in your own relationship, and I can admit to perhaps being guilty of not the best um, or not the most ideal way of dealing with an issue in front of children if you're trying
Yeah.
to be an example. So, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts around perhaps modeling the ideal example for them?
First of all, just to be gracious to us all, we all live in the biggest room, the room for improvement, right? Right. And so this usually comes at the end of the podcast when people say, is there one thing you want to share that we didn't talk about? But it's the fact of repairing a rupture. So my whole thing is building trust. And one way a kid can trust you, or anybody can trust you, actually, it's built on three things. This comes from a woman from Stanford. I need to remember her name again. But a person who tells the truth, a person who logically it makes sense, their argument in your head, and a person you know is working for your well-being, a person who cares, right? When you do something that's not in line with your character, you own it. You say, hey, this is what I did, and I don't want to be that type of person. You own it. You tell the truth. You make it right. You restore what was broken, what was lost. If something was stolen, or if you demean them, you spoke down to them. It's like, hey, you don't deserve that, and I don't want to be that type of person. And then three, you make a promise going forward. Say, hey, I'm going to operate in this identity. Um, that actually that makes deposits inside the relationship. And then with trust, yeah, again, it's built over time. So okay, yeah, I did hear you say that. But then if you revisit it again and then come back, it's wafting back and forward. It's you trying to live into your identity of who you want to be. But yeah, own stuff. And again, that's what it is to be an adult, eh?
Yeah, well, I do feel a bit better now based on what your answer was, because
Yeah.
no one, perhaps, or the majority of people aren't going to expect you to be perfect, right? But if you, as you said, if you own it and you essentially say, I'm not going to do that again, you change your behavior, then you can't do more than that, right?
It-
Um,
well, let me just present this other perspective. So Nassim Taleb calls it anti-fragile, right? And that's the idea that when something is stressed, it grows or it expands. I call it stress progressive. And that's a beautiful languages are stress progressive. As we break them, we start to form and it's emergent. And that's what we are as humans. So when we start to reframe what a mistake is or doing something wrong, yeah, we may not want it, but that's what our emotions tell us to do. It's just like, hey, is this what you want? And then if it's not what you want, you also have agency to then make it better. And that's the feature, not the flaw of humanity, eh?
mm, yeah, and I've also heard that relationships, when they're repaired, are actually stronger than when they were before. So, if you're
Yeah.
able to repair a relationship after some sort of conflict, then that can actually be a positive thing, right?
Yeah. And in communications, we say all relationships have conflict, but that doesn't define the relationship. What defines it is how we manage the conflict.
Well, you also mentioned something which I don't know whether you'll be fed up of answering, but everyone's going to ask about this, right? It's the hot topic, in my view, of perhaps parents' concerns with teenagers, and it is devices or perhaps social media. I can, again, I can confess to, I don't think there are a lot of solutions to this at the moment. I think perhaps there will be, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are in relation to making sure that young people are safe when they use these things, if they should use them at all. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. The anxious generation. So here are my thoughts. I'm a millennial, right? And we didn't get these devices really until after our brain formed. Let me start this. We are the stories we repeatedly tell ourselves, right? We're noticing, and this is inside the science, that a lot of kids are forming their identity behind the screen. And what I mean by that, it's in the likes, in the things that they see of what their values are, right? Um, a lot of them are forming attachments with the characters on the YouTube channel, right? And mind you, I want to preface all this by I'm not the angry old man waving his hand. Oh, social media. I mean, we're talking like technology, we're talking over Zoom. Technology has its blessings and its curses. One of the curses, though, at a young age, while we're developing our identity, is that as we're forming our identity on the backsides of these screens, metaphorically, when the screen closes, the question is, who am I? And if I don't know who I am, I'm not able to meet the challenges that life inevitably is going to bring. Now, I think it's also worth telling that those who create social media don't let their kids use it. That's interesting, right? Um, I respect every family in their own home with the rules and regulations they set up. I would encourage, as I've heard it from, and I'll get these show notes to you later, but I would encourage you, as long as possible, hold off social media. Maybe they need a device like a dumb phone or a bark phone to be in contact, or maybe that a watch where you can see them and communicate with them to keep them safe. I get it, I understand. But having social media, especially as a girl, because it, the genders relate differently. Um, Girls, their currency is relationships. And we noticed in 2020 there was an uptick of anxiety in relationships because that's how they, well, cyberbullying, but then that's how they get at people, you know? Um, all of that said, whatever rules you do come up with to safeguard and protect your kids, I encourage you to be collaborative or something that they have a say because at this point in the game, we in teaching, because I'm a former teacher, high school teacher, we would say student choice, student voice. As long as they have some buy-in, they're more likely to go along with it. And it's like, hey, we both agreed upon this and we both laid out what the challenges and problems are. And again, that comes inside open communication, which is part of the show up framework that I teach. But that's my thoughts on it. Yeah, save it, like keep it at bay as long as possible. And then there are other tactics and monitoring and different ways in which you could set it up to keep it at bay.
Any
Easier said than
specific
done. Easy,
ages that
yeah.
you're willing to share?
Ages I'm willing to share in regards to how long to keep them off
If
it.
yeah, and when they should have certain things.
Well, yeah, until 16. And I know that's a stretch. Yeah. You might have shared profiles. You might say, okay, I'm gonna monitor this, or again, you might have timing for your house during the school year, and then during summer years, you relax the reins. Um, but while they're forming their identity, while they're figuring out who they are, I see keeping them off social media as a defensive mechanism, and then also as a proactive or offensive mechanism. You working in the family, again, this is identity. Collective identity is family, it's culture. People like us do things like this from Seth Godin. But it's figuring out who we are as a family, what are our values, and then instilling that in them so that wherever they go, they know, oh yeah, there's something here, not watching me, but there's something here, to safeguard me. And that's how you develop character.
Okay. I think one of the questions which is on your profile is in relation to sort of the desire for independence. So, why is it that it's there, and what does it mean?
Uh, well, why is the independence? Why is the desire there?
Yeah.
I, I think, I mean, and we could have a conversation about this, but I think that is a human desire. Like, really, what I speak about is human development. And nobody likes to be controlled. And if we are, I'm not going to use the word submissive, if we are going to release control to somebody, we want to know it's somebody who has our best in mind or like has our well-being in mind. But even still, it's we want to do it on our own terms. Now, that said, there are going to be bumps and bruises, and there's a way that man or people think is right unto them, but you don't figure it out until you're on the other end of it, of that mistake. One of the harder things about parenting is wanting that for somebody you're bringing forth and allowing that to happen, especially when you know they're not playing fair. And when I say they're not playing fair, the way kids communicate, the way they respond, they react, it's sometimes it's hard not to take it personal, but you have to remember it's not personal. And as the adult in the room, you're setting the tone. Now, I do want you to know what independence is because eventually you're going to have to hold on to this valuable thing. There's no greater privilege than to be who you are. And I want you to be who you are. I want you to have that privilege. However, not however, this is also true. This is from John O'Donohue, the poet. The duty of privilege is absolute integrity. If you have a certain special amount of, like, if you're special, you have to keep your stuff together. And it's how do you communicate that over the long term? Um, yeah, I want kids to be independent in as much as it's not harming another person or harming themselves. And I think that's human development. Yeah, for anybody.
So my thoughts on
Yeah,
this conundrum, if you like, is
yeah.
there's an easy way to get it wrong, and that is, let's say you take a child and they're too young to make their own decisions, and you just say you don't have any rules, you can do whatever you like. And then the opposite end of that conundrum is there are loads of rules, and the child is either broken or completely rebels against it. So I've outlined perhaps what it shouldn't look like. What should it
Mhm.
look like if you do it correctly?
Sure. It would look like well, two things. One, as I said, the adult in the room setting the tone. Ideally, you're emotionally tuned to see, we call it mind sight from Dan Siegel, but like inside their mind of what they're processing. And that takes empathy because all behavior comes from trying to meet a need. And when you can understand what that need is, you can you can address it there. Sometimes addressing it is actually leaving it and letting them figure it out, right? Um, so one, it's you're connected with them through empathy. Two, it's letting them have some voice in it so that like you said, it's not shutting them down of saying you have no voice in this. Matter of fact, you can let them have some voice in it and say, I get to make the decision in the end. And I've heard you. You're seen. Okay. Um, I don't think I don't use the word should. Not, but I mean it's just, what it should. But we try to work towards the best in the situation. And sometimes the best is, like you said, there are the two extremes, and we're right there in the middle. And I want to respect the parents' wisdom. Yeah. We're learning as we go along as well. And what I've seen from track records is invite the person into what's going on, yet you also maintain authority, I would say, or as a decision maker. And then you start to, as they get more mature, release more decision making, or not release, but hand over to them. Trust
Yeah,
them.
I think I follow what you mean. Some perhaps summary of that would be, well, because you said about the fact that there is a human need to want to have some say in it. It's sort of like some combination between here are some safe guidelines that the parents set out, and then within those guidelines, you kind of get to make your own decision about how you proceed, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. That's what we do in leadership. We set the vision of this is what our expectation is, and then you let the operators express it as they see how to get there. And while they're getting there, I'm going to support you. So it's called autonomous support. But I'm supporting you as you develop those skills.
Hmm. One of the ones I was interested in was in about their emerging authentic self, and it's about how they often reserve who that person is for their friends, and how you can still sort of get access to it as a parent. Um, Very interested to know what your thoughts are in relation to this one, because I do have a little bit of a fear about kind of being that parent that
Too prying.
doesn't get to know the real
Mhm.
child that that they want to essentially.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, well, I'll tell you this, and I'm thinking a lot about the work of Carl Jung and so on. There will be a shadow side that forms, a shadow self that forms, meaning there's a piece that we present to the public. There's a piece we present to our parents. There's a piece we present to our peers. And there's even a piece that we present to ourselves. But there's that one part that we're hiding, the intersection of what we're hiding from all of them. Now, why do we hide things? It's psychological safety. Can I be my authentic self without fear of threat? And oftentimes that fear of threat is, again, judgment or saying you're wrong or this is bad. There's some things that society says this is bad that we know. If it is your faith that you're practicing, you'll probably hide that from them. Um, the question is, how do we let that, how do we get into that space? Or how do we get welcomed into that space? Because we can't go there unless they allow us. And again, it's to be a trustworthy present parent. And let me use the metaphor. I'm not going to invite you into my room if every time you come in here you're throwing around stuff. You're flipping over tables and you're destroying it. I'll allow you into my room if when you come in, you give me a new perspective and you help me clean it up. And really that's what a psychologist is or a psychiatrist. Um, People who we allow into our thoughts to help it make sense. One definition of crazy, and I use that word lightly, is when your expected reality does not match what you're experiencing. But when a person can come into your head, tell you a story, walk us all alongside with you to help it make sense, and then when they leave, you hold that story in your head. It's like, oh, that's one way in which you can start building that relationship and that bond, right? Another way is just to be a silent observer as the drive when you're driving them to the pitch with all their friends, and you're just a fly on the wall listening. But if you want to actively do it, they are going to close up. I call it a wall of ice. They are going to close up, and when they do open up, you take those moments, um, as well as, and there's the last thing I'll say. I call it you time in counseling. What it is micro moments, 5 minutes, 10 minutes that you have set routines around. And it's intentional to say, this time is yours that I'm spending with you and you're holding my attention. It could be after the football match weekly, if you go to like to your favorite restaurant and you just sit down to grab a drink. It could be those 5 minutes before bedtime or whatever, just to decompress the day. But it's signaling to them, you have my attention and you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Um, when you set those in, it gives you time to reconnect, and we don't have to go beyond this.
I like that concept. And yeah, I think I can see how it would be highly beneficial and would actually be quite nice for any person to say you have my undivided attention. So
So,
one
just
of the
really quick,
things,
Tom. Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
oh,
go
just
ahead.
just really quick on that. Yeah, yeah. That's relationships, right? If you have a partner that you love, you make date nights. If you have a prayer life, you make time for the things you care about. If you have a prayer life and you're speaking to greater forces, higher powers, you make time for that in the morning or in the evening. That's relationships. It's just like what you said. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. I'm interested to know about this one because I've heard it's pretty bad. The moodiness, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't think I'm that prepared for it. But yeah, what have you got to say about teen and preteen moodiness and how to deal with it?
Oh man. Um, this is wisdom, a little bit of wisdom here I have. It's not personal. Easier said than done. And I say that as a high school teacher, and you know the person is being rude, just outright rude, right? It's not personal. The three P's. It's not personal. It's not permanent, and it's not pervasive. That said, um, all emotions. You would have this conversation with your kid. All emotions are allowed because emotions are informing us of our understanding of our experience with the outer world. Emotions do five things, and one of those is informing us of how we're interacting with other people and how we're moving towards our goal, and so on. However, all behaviors are not. And in that, you have to set up your boundaries and expectations of how we communicate. And again, that's top down. So there are going to be moments when you're moody and you snap off on your kid. That's when you make those repair and reconnections to say, as an example, when I did this, that wasn't right, and I'm coming back to make it right because I care about this relationship. Now, when you pop off at me like that, I respect you need space. And let's think about what we can do to help you process your shaken snow globe. And again, I'm saying this when we're on a podcast talking. I know in the moment it everything may be twisted, but that's where, stimulus and response in that space is for you to actually change your future. Um, Not all behavior is allowed, and we have to make some rules and regulations about our behavior.
Yeah, it's a great point. Because yeah, like you say, the emotion is valid, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to let someone throw things at you. So very, very worthwhile hearing that. I could listen to you talk about this stuff for, I don't know if hours is accurate, but I could quite happily sit back and listen to the knowledge. There's just one thing, one last thing that I wanted to ask you about, and it's in relation to connecting during activities that you do together. For example, I think sports and that sort of thing is an example that you gave. And I didn't learn about this until recently, that it is a way to, like, this is the thing that we do together, and it kind of it creates that common ground, if you like, which helps with the relationship. Um, would you like to share perhaps what I haven't on that topic?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. A lot of people, I wonder if it's men who bring that up. The reason being is because that's how guys connect. We connect in activities of shared spaces of doing things together, right? Um, Women connect in terms of relationships, and that's a broad generalization. Um, the second thing I want to say on that, three things I want to say on that, but so usually it's in the genders that guys connect by doing activities together. However, the second thing is, just like Angela Duckworth speaks about, it's a shared struggle when you and your kid are working on a project together. And it doesn't have to be the same project. It's rather, so in my show up framework, the last W is wonder and explore this world together, which is project-based learning, project-based living, I call it. It shows them that you can set goals and work long-term towards something, and you show them your struggles and your ups and downs. For you, it might be this podcast, it might be a business or something, but something you're building. And then they choose something, maybe learning a language, maybe their grades, or maybe a craft or hobby they're choosing. So that's the second thing on that. The third thing I want to share on that is create something that's yours. And what I mean by that is it might be a particular dance that you guys do, or a particular handshake, or even on a longer term, like your habits, your rituals. Because remember, identity means people like us do things like this. There are nuances that I do that make me Marcus, and there are nuances that our family does that makes us us. And when you can bake that in, when you can build that in, it shows, yeah, no, there's this is our thing. This is our connection. And it might be something silly that like both of you guys come up with organically and that emerges. But um, but then that's when you put your stamp on it and it's like, yeah, this is our thing.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I think that kind of activity that we do together, it's kind of like a simple thing that if you do, just makes things a lot easier. So I appreciate your answer on that. In terms of, I see the book in the background. Um, what are you doing in this space where you'd like to promote or share with others?
Sure. This is my book of poetry. This isn't in regards to parenting. But it's called Inspire Life Through Words of Well-Being. I wrote it for my 12th graders. I wrote it for myself as Marcus Aurelius, meditations, sitting down, organizing my thoughts. I do write poetry. I am working on a book, the Show Up Framework. That's the framework that I use with my parents, with my clients. And it says, yeah, nurturing your preteen's potential. So that should be out in about the next 2 months or so, or however, when you see this podcast, you can look for it. And if they want to reach out to me, marcushiggs.com. You can read about a little bit more of what I do, but you can reach out also to LinkedIn. I'm gathering case studies now. So if you want to understand what I do, yeah, please feel free to reach out.
I know you probably get this all the time, but I am intrigued. You do you have some Stoic philosophy background because of your name?
Oh, of course, this is meditations right here. I think this book has been very influential in the work that I do. I speak about virtues and values. We do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And right is, yeah, we can get into philosophy of like, yeah, your right is different from my right, but that's values. What's important to you? But virtues are with everyone. 24 virtues, virtues in action. When we look at positive psychology, these are the things that bind us together as humans and that work towards our well-being. So when you meet people, if you spot their virtues and you speak to that, people live into your expectations. And then when you understand their values, our values may not be aligned, but you just find people that align with your values. And that's let the world flourish. I'm all about flourishing. And I think that's what the Stoics did. Live a good life as you understand it, as you're contributing to the whole, understanding you're a part of it. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the value today and everything you've shared. I certainly at least feel a little bit more prepared. I don't know if I am more prepared, but I do feel that way, which is kind of, I don't know, a little victory. Um, do you have any closing thoughts for the episode?
Um, you know, uh, here goes a very if you can follow me, if you are the universe experiencing itself and we think the universe is expanding, the question is it being pulled on the edges or being pushed up from the middle? And the answer is yes. So if at an early age we can implant a pump, if you will, in the middle of it, speaking about your child, to let it emerge, to let it come out. Um, that's the etymology of the word to parent and to teach. It means to bring forth. And that's what I want to do in my work. Yeah. Thank you for sharing the platform. Yeah. Just thank you.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for being a great guest today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Thomas.